Okay, so in the last video we talked about the essence of cavities and how cavities were caused by acid events at localized gelatinous masses called plaques. And what I had showed you was I made this little graph where we had pH of 7, which we said was neutral, and anything lower than a pH of 7 is more acidic. And we had said that teeth start to demineralize, or they start to create, or I should say cavities start to form at about 5.5. And we had said that, in this graph, maybe we are the area around the plaque is about 7 for a while, and then we said that there was a sugar event in which, maybe you had a sugary drink or something, and the plaque in there, the bacteria, the S mutans in that plaque was exposed to the sugar and then started to eat it, creating a byproduct, which was acid, and that kind of spiked our pH in this graph down, so more acidic, and then slowly recovered back towards neutral after that sugar exposure. So what we have is this kind of time here, we'll kind of shade it in, where the tooth is actually being demineralized by the acid that's there. And I had said that this is kind of the crux of the situation, or how to explain a lot of dentistry. And in this video we're going to talk more about this graph and how it pertains to just our everyday life and our overall oral health. So in this graph, you can imagine that having this one little sugar spike is a problem, because we have this much time where the tooth around any place where plaque is to decay. So if we take this graph and we change it a little bit, and so let's make a couple of these, and so this is pH, and let's just label 1, and we'll label it as 5.5. And so I'm just going to put a line across here. And so we're going to think of this as just time. And so now we can go back and we can overlay our event. So let's say that this is, let's say that this is 8 a.m. in the morning. Let's say this is noon. And then let's say this is, 7 o'clock or something like that. And so most of us, we go about our day, we have breakfast, and then we kind of don't eat anything, and then we'll have a lunch, and then we go through our day, and then we'll have dinner. And so we have these kind of 3 spikes for plaque that's formed. And so, or plaque that's resting on the teeth. And then if we think about it, most of us brush in the morning, and then we brush again right at night. And so what happens after you brush is, any plaque deposits, hopefully you get those off. And then we have less we have less space, or less events, or less specific areas between teeth, like I showed you last time, where these little events are occurring. Now the other way to think about this is, let's get rid of this for a second. Okay. Is now let's go and do another one, and so we'll say this is 5.5 again, and we'll throwing it out there here. And so this is still the same. We'll still say that this is 8 a.m., 12 p.m., about lunchtime, and then dinner over here. And so now let's the worst case scenario for tooth decay is probably someone that sits around and sips on, let's say they sip on a soda, which is really sugary. And so, they get to work and then they kind of sip and then have another sip and then sip and sip and sip and sip, sip and sip. And so we have all these little localized events. And what we can do is we can compare the time between the two. So, if we added up all these little shaded, I'll shade them in a little bit, all these little shaded times where there was a pH that was low enough to demineralize the tooth, it wasn't so bad here. We only had 3 of them. But if we go down here and we were to add up all of these, so it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This, just off the cuff kind of drawing. And this one we had 11 different spikes. And so what this points to is, it's a lot better to have, have less exposures. And you're saying, well, what else could we do, right, to try to prevent this? One, we don't eat so many times, right? The fewer sips of Coke that we take throughout the day is going to be better. What we also need to think about is, so that's the first thing. The second thing we need to do is we need to think about how can we change this graph to make it better. And so let's change colors here. Let's make that same graph. This is pH. Let's say this is 7, so this is neutral. And so if we can make our teeth stronger, then maybe the pH that our teeth demineralize at is going to be lower. So let's call it 4.5. There's different numbers in different literatures. So if we can make this spike have to be deeper to get any decay, that's the second thing we can do, right? And then that way, if you were to have a spike that wasn't quite that far, then we're not going to get any demineralization action going on, because it doesn't get to this lower acidity to cause demineralization. And we do that through fluoride. And there's kind of an elaborate mechanism for why fluoride works, but this is kind of the general idea. Fluoride makes the teeth that we have more resistant to acid, so these little acid spikes actually have to be much, in this grass, deeper, or you have to reach a lower acidity for actual tooth demineralization. So I'm running out of time here, but in recap, what we learned from this one graph is that we want to limit our demineralization time, so we don't want to take all these snacks throughout the day. We would rather have a few sugar events, as it were. We don't want to take a sugary coffee or a Coke and sit at a desk and kind of sip on it all day, because that's going to cause us more problems. And then the second thing it shows us is that we want to try to make our teeth stronger, in this case through the use of fluoride, by requiring the pH to get to a lower level for actual demineralization to occur. And lastly, it kind of points out the importance of brushing and flossing, right? So if you weren't to brushed in the morning, or you weren't to brush in the evening, you're going to have more localized events. So you're going to have plaque in multiple places in your mouth, where these acid spikes can occur. So we want to make sure we clean everything off. Let's make a little list. We want to clean. We want to limit snacks. And 3, we want to strengthen our teeth. And this is everything that the dentist has always told you, and these graphs are the reason why.